Good morning. It's very good to have you here this morning with us. We have some important business to take care of this morning, a couple of items of great interest. But before we get into those, we have some awards here to recognizing faculty by their peers. So, Chancellor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and I'm going to ask Academic Senate President Beth Smith and Foundation President Keith Mills to join us up here, and turn that over to Beth to do the hard work, and then Keith and I will be the Vanna Whites of this.
Thank you. One of the greatest aspects of being Senate President is having the opportunity to recognize the work of faculty in this state. And the Academic Senate has a process by which we submit names and follow-up process to recognize those faculty based on geographic areas, first of all. So we divide the state into 4 different areas. And then there are criteria that each of our candidates must meet. And this year, for the first time, we've added part-timers to our award process. So in 2 out of the 4 areas, we have specifically identified that the award must go to a part-timer. So I'm really pleased today to launch this initiative where we're able to recognize part-time and full-time faculty for their contributions. So without further ado, let's start with Rebecca Sarkisian from Fresno City College. She is a part-time faculty member in the music department. And while she's coming up, let me tell you just a little bit about what her Academic Senate President said about her. The Fresno City Academic Senate President says that Rebecca generously contributes her time, effort, and talents as a part-time instructor for the love of her discipline, the college, and most importantly, the students Fresno City College serves. Congratulations, Rebecca.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a few moments to deliver a few thank yous. Chancellor, Board of Governors, Academic Senate Foundation, thank you so much for the award. This is a high honor, and I'm deeply grateful. I also wanted to thank you for including adjunct faculty in the award. I think it sends a very powerful and important message to all faculty, and it speaks, I think, of your insight and your understanding of the contributions of all adjunct faculty. Thank you so very much. I wanted to do a shout out and thank you to my department. I have often said I work with the best department in the best division at my school, and I love my school. They're great collaborators, they're energetic, excellent educators, love the students, and wonderful practitioners. And I've gone to them over the years with ideas for curriculum enhancement and activities and projects for the students, and they said, okay, let's do it. And so they're great to work with, and it's been a wonderful environment for education for the students, and I've really appreciated that. And finally, I wanted to thank my wonderful husband, David, who is an excellent practitioner in his own right, who has been very encouraging and supportive of my work over the years and taught me many things along the way as well. So I'm deeply grateful for that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
No. There are many circumstances though.
Can you send us a picture of that? Okay. Yeah.
Okay, our next award winner is Katrin Weiss. She is an earth science faculty member from City College of San Francisco. She is not able to join us today, but there are 2 representatives from City College. Her Academic Senate President is here to receive the award, and she has other support in the audience cheering her along. So, Fred, would you like to come up and accept the award on behalf of Katrin? And let me say just a little bit about Katrin. These are Fred's words. He could say them himself, but let me share. He says that Katrin could have a job at virtually any college, but she chooses to work at a community college because of her commitment to open access and affordable education. And she is a crucial role model for female students and for all students from underserved populations who can look up to her as a symbol of success against the odds.
Katrin prepared a brief statement for me to read, if I may. A special thank you to the CCSF Academic Senate for recommending me for this award. It's a special honor considering the hundreds of hardworking, dedicated, and equally deserving faculty across our college who could also have been recommended. I am daily, this is Katrin speaking now, I am daily inspired by the great work so many of my colleagues do inside and outside the classroom despite limited resources and a stressful political climate and accreditation crisis. Our work demonstrates better than words how deeply we care about our students and about public education. I'll do my best impersonation. Oh, great. I get to hand it to her. Thanks so much. Yes. Yes.
Okay, next we have Jody Millward, an English composition and literature instructor from Santa Barbara City College. And Jody's Senate president had these lovely words to say about her. Jody has a passionate commitment to open access for community college students and to the overall community college mission. And she has worked with underserved and military veteran issues for our students. So congratulations, Jody.
Thank you so much. I'm a little nervous. It's okay, though. To say that I'm honored to receive this award is an understatement. I'm grateful to my department for their nomination efforts, to my Senate colleagues for affirming the nomination, and to this board and all you people here for your history of recognizing faculty commitment to teaching and to the profession. No one wins an award on her own. I am fortunate to work with colleagues who prize collaboration, embrace innovation, and put student success front and center. In that way, my department is simply a microcosm of Santa Barbara City College, who, as you know, tied with Walla Walla, so we're number 1/2. Nor can I forget the many mentors who so generously shared their time and wisdom, including SBCC faculty, my colleagues on the Pacific Coast English Board, and the founders and leaders of the National Two-Year College English Association. These men and women demonstrate an unflagging enthusiasm for teaching and an unwavering belief in and commitment to their students. Look at this, it's like, you think I'm gonna set the Oscars, I could have practiced. Oh, thank you. Oh, wait, look, I'm shaking too badly. Anyway, given the quality of the people I've worked with over the years and the talent I see in this room, you probably won't be surprised to hear that when I saw congratulations, you've won, I thought it was spam. And I deleted it, and somebody had to come down the hall and say, hey, you won Hayward. I'm like, really? I thought it was, you won a ticket to Thailand or something. Finally, I'm sincere about this. Finally, I must acknowledge the inspiration students provide. Although many believe community college is education on the cheap, our students pay a high personal price for the privilege of sitting in our classrooms. In terms of the sacrifices they make. They often dash in from work, rush off to attend their children, sisters, brothers, or family members, then off to serve as interpreters for parents and friends, or to volunteer in their churches and community. Despite the heavy burden of personal responsibilities they must carry, they are committed to learning and dedicate time to study groups, tutorial sessions, teacher conferences, as well as independent study and research. They believe in the transformative power of education, and in the face of such personal excellence and dedication, all of us are transformed. And I do get kind of choked up when I think of all of the many students who've succeeded and done so much to do that. I share this award with my husband, Mike Redman, who has supported all my work and long hours and is now taking care of the dog. And also with my brother Dick, who's here with me today and who since childhood has served as my guide and role model. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, it's right here. Oh, right here. There we go. New shoes. It is the Oscar, you're right. Thank you so much.
I want to thank and acknowledge Lori Gaskins, president of the college, who is here today too. Thank you, Lori, for being here.
And next we have John Sullivan, an English teacher from Riverside City College, and he is also one of our first part-time winners. So that was Rebecca and John this time. Congratulations. And John's Senate president had this to say about him. He commented that Sullivan feels responsible to provide students with the tools and experiences to help them move forward on their road to success, and works diligently to develop multiple resources to meet the needs of different learning styles. Congratulations, John.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a few prepared notes as well. First, I want to thank the Riverside City College Academic Senate for nominating me for this, as well as the Academic Senate of the Community College, California Community Colleges, and the Board of Governors as well, and Chancellor Bryce Harris for this honor. It's not often that this happens for associate faculty, and being the first year that this is done, this is a very large step forward, to borrow from Neil Armstrong in a very badly paraphrased way. But lest it go to my head, I'm reminded that in our local paper, as I shared with Bryce Harris last night, that the local announcement appeared on the obituary page. So I guess I can boast both that I won the award and live to tell about it. But on a serious note, when the article appeared this past Saturday, I was actually attending the memorial for a fellow part-time faculty member, Mike Joyce, who taught administration of justice classes at Riverside City College since 1980. Over the past 20 years, he'd created a CSI laboratory program with the accompanying fully equipped lab and taught those classes every semester. He could have simply retired as Assistant Chief Investigator at Riverside District Attorney's Office in 1996, but he was passionate about not just crime scene investigation, but about students and teaching. So I accept this honor for Mike as well, and for the many associate part-time faculty like us, like Wendy Norris, who teaches speech at RCC and San Bernardino Valley College, and at the end of each semester hosts showings in downtown Riverside during the monthly art walk as part of the students' final projects to broaden their work from the classroom to the community. Or Kelly Dower at Moreno Valley College, who teaches music and oversees the college choir, rehearses with them and takes them to performances, and does all the extensive behind-the-scenes work. Or counselors like Sabrina Wilhelm at Chaffey College, who with a ratio of 1 counselor for every 2,000 to 3,000 students is constantly advising students, teaching guidance classes, and reviewing and signing off on online education plans. I accept this honor on behalf of all my colleagues who work day in and day out to make our students successful despite the lack of support from the state and from within the system. The one request I ask of this body on our behalf and on our students' behalf is to do more to advocate for the resources, the permanence, the office space, the equitable wages and benefits, and the financing and education needed to make these a reality, to enable us to keep making our students successful. Again, thank you for this honor.
also like to thank the Board of Governors and Chancellor Harris for providing such a warm welcome for all of our winners. They were treated to a very lovely dinner last night with the board, and we really appreciate your recognition of the work of faculty. So on behalf of all of them and all of our winners who are still here today, many congratulations and thanks.
Congratulations again, and thank you, both of you, Beth and Keitha. Great honor for our faculty. And again, congratulations. We'll now move on to information and reports. Item 4.2, update on Student Success Initiative implementation system goals. This item presents information on the goals aligned with student success for the California Community College system. Chancellor.
Thank you, President Baca, members of the board. It's a pleasure to bring to you this morning a discussion about the implementation of statewide goals in accordance with the requests of the Student Success Initiative that this board approved in January of 2012. As a backdrop for this conversation, let me remind you that we began talking about the need for statewide goals more than a year ago in your board retreat in 2013, and have had a couple of conversations since that time. Patrick Perry, who will go into detail, also made the first presentation to a consultation earlier this month, and this conversation and these goals will be looked at by consultation again before we come back to you in May with a recommendation on the actual statewide goals. Patrick will not only go into detail on the goals, but he'll also tell you a bit about the budget trailer language that really follows along with your direction in January of 12 from the administration challenging us to set these goals as a state system as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Vice Chancellor Patrick Perry, who has worked not only with consultation and with this board, but with a larger advisory group as well. Patrick?
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Baca and Vice Chair Baum and members of the board. As Chancellor Harris stated, I'm giving you an update on the progress of setting goals for the community college system. I'm going to give you some background here on why are we doing this. There's really three threads that lead us to this. Number one is the Student Success Task Force report. So recommendation 7.3 said thou shalt implement a student success scorecard, and we actually completed that in March 2013, and we completed the State of the System report in January 2014. We saw that, and it was submitted to the legislature on time. Recommendation 7.2 stated that in collaboration with the Chancellor's Office, districts and colleges will identify specific goals for success and report their progress towards meeting these goals in a public and transparent manner consistent with the scorecard. So we have a call out in the Student Success Task Force report. It gave us some more specificity as far as how we should do this. In consultation with internal and external stakeholders, we shall establish an overarching series of statewide goals with districts and colleges prioritizing these goals and establishing strategies to address them. And in order to focus attention on equity gaps, the goals will include sub-goals by race and ethnicity. So the scorecard definitely does this. We have this. Scorecard is also our equity scorecard. So that's one thread. The next item dealing with goals is some draft trailer bill language that we've received from Department of Finance for the upcoming proposed budget, and it proposes the following. Before the commencement of the 15-16 fiscal year, the Chancellor shall, in coordination with districts, annually approve and publicly post segment-wide and community college district goals for, at a minimum, the outcomes and measures described in the scorecard. Okay? The third thread, and by the way, that is proposed trailer bill language. There is still room for negotiation on that, but it is gives us a pretty strong signal of intent. The third thread here is a bill that is now law. It was SB 195, signed by the governor in September 2013, and it placed in the Ed Code the following. It's the intent of the legislature that budget and policy decisions regarding post-secondary education adhere to all of the following goals. Number one, access and success, participation by demographic groups, including low-income students, greater completion rates by all students, and improve outcomes for graduates. So a lot of this for us is covered with the scorecard, and we're in alignment. We were in alignment with this bill even before it was passed. Second item is better align degrees and credentials with economic, workforce, and civic needs. So although we don't have something like this specifically in the scorecard, we have Salary Surfer, which is a very good instrument to show our contribution to workforce and alignment with economic needs. And then finally, it has a call out to efficiency. Ensure the effective and efficient use of resource in order to increase post-secondary educational outcomes and maintain affordability. So this is something that we are going to address in the draft goals that we have here. Furthermore, the Lieu bill stated that the intention is to have a set of distinct metrics for each segment, different missions, and I think the scorecard is very clear that they are designed for a two-year public institution type of outcomes. At least 6 and no more than 12 metrics should be developed that are derived from publicly available data. And the scorecard actually has 6 metrics in it, but we're going to add a few more for this. And the metrics be disaggregated and reported by gender, race, and ethnicity, which we have. Income, which is a little bit trickier to measure. We have a proxy measure for that. Age group, we have that. Full-time and part-time enrollment status were appropriate and applicable. So that's something we're kicking around. The scorecard does not break students down by full-time or part-time because for us it's a very term-based transitory thing, and very few students who actually start part-time persist fully part-time throughout their entire academic history. So we've long since had problems putting them in those buckets. We just like to track them for all students for a long enough period of time to capture them all. Okay. The development of goals has had a reasonably lengthy process over the course of the last year. We had a goals discussion at the Bog Retreat in March 2013. It's gone to Consultation Council actually twice, in November 2013 and again in February 2014. We've had a formal convening of the Scorecard Advisory Committee in January 2014 where we went through the scorecard and this requirement for goals and came up with what we have today. And then we have the Board of Governors meeting here today where this is an informational item, but ultimately the goal is to get it to a fully approved framework. So the Scorecard Advisory Committee came up with the following as far as proposed draft goals for the system. They're in 4 areas: student success, equity, student services, and efficiency, and they roughly align with these 3 pieces of language that we're trying to deal with. The 10 metrics go like this. Metrics number 1 through 5 are straight success rates based upon the 5 scorecard rates. Okay? Districts and campuses didn't want us coming up with a whole new set of metrics just for the goals. They really wanted to use what was in the scorecard because people are getting comfortable with that. Metric number 6 is a volume metric and deals specifically with our growth in associate degrees for transfer. So it's a goal related to the annual volume of that. We have completion rate among subgroups as an equity goal, but it's dealing with a scorecard metric. We have a student services goal, which is % of our students with an education plan. It's an annual volume metric. And then 2 metrics that deal with efficiency. Number 1 is average FTES per student. And then finally, FTES spent per scorecard outcome. So I'm going to get into these with a decent amount of detail. It's going to get dense here in a minute. So we start off with the first 5 metrics, which are scorecard metrics. And they are 2 completion metrics and 3 momentum metrics. So we have the completion rate, which is for degree and transfer-seeking students. What percentage of students within 6 years of starting earn a degree, certificate, transfer, or transfer prepared? We have the persistence rate of that cohort, what percentage of that cohort persists to the start of their 3rd term contiguously. We have what percentage of that cohort earns 30 units. We have our math and English remedial rates, what percentage of students that start in remedial math, English, and ESL complete math, English, and ESL remediation. And And then finally, we have a CTE program completion rate for students that are in CTE programs.
Patrick, let me interrupt you for a second and ask you to remind the board of all of these, this cohort comprises about what percentage of our total offerings?
The scorecard comprises 2/3 of our head count and 90% of our system FTE, okay? And of the 1/3 of the head count it doesn't provide, the vast majority of those students are single course takers, which we know is roughly about 28% of our head count. So
I asked him to do that because one of the criticisms in past, the ARC and other reporting in the past, was that we were only reporting on a small portion of our students. And so, as Patrick's reminded you, this is 90% of our offerings and 2/3 of our head count. And the ones that aren't included in these metrics are simply the single course takers. Thank you.
So the goal for each of these success rates, and this is draft and still negotiable, we're working on this, but the goal that we've come up with here is to increase the rates in each new cohort by 1% annually. So what we're looking at in these cohorts, these are starting cohorts of students that began 6 years ago, and we're wanting to look at their outcomes after 6 years and see if they increase by 1% for each successive starting cohort. To see how this is lined up in the past, here's past history on this. The completion rate and the persistence rate and the 30 units rate, you can see how these line up. I mean, they're somewhat steady. 1% is a pretty large goal. These are large cohorts of, 200,000 students starting annually that make it into this. So 1% is a very significant movement in this. And we have seen some of these cohorts move up by that amount. We've seen completion rate, unfortunately, go down over time, and we certainly want to attack that as a system. For the remedial math and English rates, you can see remedial English rate has definitely gone up. Remedial math rate has definitely gone up, so we're making progress. Those goals would be met. The CTE rates remain reasonably stable. It's gone down just in the last cohort. Okay? Okay, those are the scorecard goals. Metric number 6 deals specifically with progress in transfer degrees. And this is the number of students who earned an associate degree for transfer in each academic year. This is an annual volume metric. And the goal here is to increase the number of students earning a transfer degree by 5% annually for 5 years. Historically, we don't have a past history on this. We've only had 2 years' worth of data. If you were using 11-12 as your baseline, pretty clearly that would have been an easy goal to make. It's probably not where we want to start here. My guess is this is a number that's going to rapidly increase up to a certain level and then probably level and become stable again. So we may want to look at this as we move forward and see maybe 5% is not particularly ambitious in the first few years of this. We may want to go back and look at and say, we might want some percentage of our transfers to be having transfer degrees as they move, but this is one that we probably want to revise a little bit. Metric 7 deals specifically with equity, and it deals with the scorecard completion rate. So that is the metric that we're pegging our equity metric to. What essentially we're doing here is we're creating an index for each race and ethnicity for scorecard completion rate. So to give you an example, for the 06-07 first-time freshman degree and transfer-seeking cohort, the completion rate for that group for Hispanic students was 39.5%. The statewide completion rate was 49.2%. So you create an index out of that, and in this case, a ratio of 100 means you're at par with the statewide average. And if your index comes below that, then you would consider that to be underperforming. Okay? And we would do that for all of the ethnicities every year for this completion rate, and take a look at the ones that fell below 100. Okay? The goal here would be to increase the underperforming subgroups ratios in each academic year by at least 1% annually. So you want to get your dispersion closer to 100 as time moved along. You want to have less differentiation between the statewide average and those that are underperforming. Next slide here shows you what this has looked like historically. So some of these have reasonably small ends to them, like the one on top there, Pacific Islander. This number probably bounces around a little bit too much because it's a small number. You can see we're making good progress here with Hispanic students, which is good. This is going to be the bulk of our students coming in. We're not making progress with African American students, and Native American students are also kind of bouncing around a little bit. So this is how this would be measured from a goal perspective. Metric number 8 deals with student services, and we have a proposal here that we want students to have education plans. And so we're going to measure that directly. We want to measure the percentage of credit students who have an education plan, excluding those who are exempt from having an education plan. And we would look at students who are enrolled in each fall term and check to see if they got an education plan by the end of the academic year. And the goal here would be to increase the percentage in each fall term by 3% annually. Now, Linda Michalowski caught me after the first draft of this and says, my guess is this is going to go up also rapidly in the first few years. Colleges are greatly incentivized to have students with education plans, and so this one may be a goal that we might want to review and maybe set our targets higher for. Metric number 9 deals with efficiency and is average FTES generated per student. What this really looks at is the course credit loads and FTES generated by each student in our system. What we want to look at here are students taking more courses and earning more credits and generating more FTE, because ultimately that leads to higher success rates and higher program completion rates. If our system had a number here of 1.0, that means every student in our system was full-time. The goal is to just increase the average FTES per student in each year. Here's what it looks like historically, and as you can see over time that also has gone up. The average student in our system is now almost a half-time student, and that actually has gone steadily up over the past 15 years. Finally, last metric, which is a little bit complicated, but it's an efficiency metric, FTES spent per scorecard success outcome. So in the scorecard, you have what we call high-order outcomes, whether a student got a degree, a certificate, transferred to a four-year institution, or became transfer prepared. And you look at it by each successive first-time freshman cohort moving forward. The metric here is total FTES generated by the cohort during that 6-year period, divided by the total number of outcomes attained by that cohort during the 6-year period. It looks graphically like this. In any starting cohort, the bulk of the FTES that they're going to consume are going to be in the early years of the cohort, but the bulk of their outcomes are going to come in later years of the cohort, okay? So in year 1 here, and this is example numbers, these are not real numbers, a first-time freshman cohort of 1,000 students may generate 10,000 FTE, but they get a handful of outcomes in the first couple of years. As successive years go by, they burn fewer FTE, but their outcomes begin appearing. What we're looking at each year is this ratio of year to year of how outcomes are related to the FTES in the cohort. Next slide here gives you an example of what this may look like. Okay? The real number here is not 56/6. That's actually a dummy number. I would hope that we don't burn 56 FTE to get one outcome. The real numbers to date that we've run look more like this. So for a first-time freshman cohort in 03-04, for every 3 FTES generated by that cohort, we got a degree, a certificate, a transfer, or a transfer prepared. And we do allow multiple counts here. Over time, that number has actually gone up, which is not what we want to see. The goal here, well, we're actually going to track this from year to year. So here are, the next slide show multiple cohorts moving through the pipeline. The 10-11 cohort we can already begin to track. They started off at a, say, less efficient than prior year cohorts, but by year 3 they were on par with previous cohorts, and we'll see the ultimate goal here is by year 6 to have them below the cohorts that were ahead of them. The goal here is to get this number down to 3 FTES per outcome within 5 years, and then remain stable or become, hopefully, more efficient and decrease that number. Okay, so those are the 10 metrics. Summarizing this, this has been a bit of a moving target over the past year. We started off with, let's address what the Student Success Task Force was looking for with goals. Then we get SB 195 and its set of goals. Then we get the governor and the negotiation with the governor's office and Department of Finance and their proposed set of goals. We certainly don't want to have, 3 different sets for all of these things. We've been really trying to keep this together and keep the burden down. SB 195 does have its own thread. The Intersegmental Coordinating Committee is about to meet and talk about their goals. We're going to roll in and say, these are ours, let's align, and hopefully not have something different. The draft budget trailer bill language can still be negotiated, but the key goal-setting elements will still be in there. And I think the fact that we're on top of this early helps us in future negotiations with everyone involved. Once implemented, we would definitely do an annual review not only of the progress of the goals, but of the metrics and the goals themselves. Are these the right goals moving forward? Have we achieved this goal? Okay, is it time to have a new metric or a new goal? A reminder, these are system goals, although there will likely be these goals rolled out campus and district-wide. Those goals will be established locally. It's not just going to be, okay, here's your proportion of this, because each campus and district have different missions, and they may work on one goal more than another. And know full well that campus and districts have an ACCJC requirement to set goals for that body too, and so we don't, once again, want to have them doing a lot more work than is necessary. There is a process here potentially for local goal planning, review, and local assistance that we're negotiating with the governor, and there's potentially some resource that's going to come our way for this, a number of bodies for the Chancellor's office and some local assistance money, but that has yet to be fully fleshed out and negotiated. And that is the summary.
Before we open this to the board for questions, let me make just a couple of concluding comments. First of all, I would argue there's no other system of higher education in this country that is brave enough to do what you just saw. And I applaud Patrick and the team here at the Chancellor's office, along with the Consultation Council and the advisory group who've been involved in this conversation all along. This is remarkable ground that we're tilling. Secondly, I want to prepare the board for us to come back in May with some of these having been changed, because we really do have to have more conversation through consultation and other bodies to make certain that there's a general agreement in the direction which we're headed. And then third, I want to harken back to what Patrick said about looking at these goals annually. The first time you set goals, you have to some extent, make some assumptions that may or may not prove to be true. So we're going to set these goals over the next couple of months and bring them to you for your consideration. And then we're going to come back annually, tell you how we're doing, and we may revise the goals in the out years as a result. Because, as you've already heard, some of these may be modest. Some of them may be really much further than we can get within a reasonable amount of time. So I think we have to have a sort of a collective willingness to tolerate ambiguity in this environment. But I think for us to, because this is such difficult work, to ignore it or to say, you know what, let somebody else set goals, we'll just kind of follow along, would be foolish on our part. So I thank Patrick and the team, along with the faculty and others who have worked through consultation. This may come back to you in a slightly revised version, but with that, we open it up to questions from the board.
Thank you, Chancellor, and thank you, Vice Chancellor Perry, for the work that you've been doing. We all recognize that even as we do all our work to ensure student success, improve quality of education, that we have to have some basis to measure that by. And the work that you've done certainly lends to that. It's not only transparent, but it is becoming increasingly information, and it's a system that produces reliability, consistency, accuracy, and we'll be able to take a real hard look at the things that we do well and those things that we don't do well, and really make the adjustments that are necessary. So I know that we're all very interested in that, and Chancellor Harris, I know that you're working not only with the staff here but also with the field to make sure that we have a consensus of opinion with regard to these instruments and the way that we apply them. Members, any questions? Vice President Long?
Well, thank you very much for the report. This is terrific and going to be really a goldmine for educational researchers as well, too, because then with this body of data, you can actually hopefully pinpoint the impacts of certain things like you could in the health field, whether if a student has an educational plan, is there a correlating impact on success and persistence? If a student is full-time, what is the correlating impact on other success measures? So I'm excited to see that. My question is a process question, though. As this develops, the role of the Board of Governors in setting the actual goals, where will we come in to actually say, yes, we as a system will commit to a 1% increase improvement or a 5% improvement too?
Well, that'll happen when we come back to you in May with our recommendations. And at that point, you as the board will either accept them or modify them or reject them. But at that point, you as a board have set the statewide goals for this system.
Right. And then going back to something that Member Reed brought up too, is there any metric that we could point to that also addresses workforce development needs for the state as well in these metrics? What can we point to?
Yeah, there's only one related metric in this, which is the CTE completion. But as the board has discussed, I think later this year, early next year, you have expressed an interest in a student success task force kind of approach to workforce and economic development, and that's certainly part of the conversation you'll have at your retreat coming up.
Thank you. Member Belansky.
Thank you very much. As we get prepared and other people get involved again and offer suggestions. Just as a question and then a follow-up, setting a goal like for the ADT degrees of 5% annually for 5 years, what would those numbers look like?
Yeah, actually,
or approximately?
Yeah, I actually ran this on a calculator last night. 5 years, let's see, I'm getting to that. Let me get back to that one. Okay, so for the AAT, 5% at 5 years gets you up to about 5,000, which I actually intrinsically thought was kind of low. I think we'll actually be at a number higher than that. But
what if we didn't reach that? Then what happens to these numbers or these goals? Does it come back to be looked at again to come up with reasons why? I guess the reason I keep saying with this one is what I experience in my own college, that students want to go to UC more than they want to go to CSU at our college because we're half a block from UC Berkeley. And as a result, because the articulation agreements in most majors are so diverse across the system, the UC system, while you can say to a student, you know, you'll get a little extra incentive if you put this in your personal narrative, I have to be honest, it's becoming hard to sell them in a sense when the first objective is UC and not CSU. So I just put that in there. Maybe that's not common across the state, but just that if there's something we could do if we don't meet the metrics so it doesn't suddenly look bad for us.
Well, I don't, first of all, remember that these are statewide metrics, and you'll have an opportunity to look at our progress annually, and we may well revise them on an ongoing basis. But at the college level, you'll set those goals, and if your region has that kind of characteristic, then you're likely to set goals that are considerably lower
Right.
than another region where the linkage might be direct.
Right.
And I think that's an important thing to note here. We are not going to take the statewide goals and just mathematically apply them to the 112 colleges. We're going to say to the colleges, here's what the Board of Governors has said we as a system want to do. Now you, local
Set
college,
local
tell
goals.
us where you're going to, in some cases, do better, or some cases maybe not, as you pointed out, may not be realistic.
And just a couple of other questions. I think the ed plan thing is about comprehensive ed plans. Right, okay. And the new data element, which is starting in summer 2014, has that been widely, because I don't know, obviously, has that been widely disseminated to start programming for this data element on ed plans?
Yeah, my understanding it has, and it will actually be a data element used for funding calculations too. Is that correct? Yeah. So they
Okay,
will
just,
rapidly acclimate to that data element.
Right, because it sounds like by picking that one out, it's different than some of the other ones, and maybe that's not true. And the only other thing I would say is with the ACCJC annual report, they don't just use terminology of goal, they also use terminology of set a standard. And they've said to colleges, you could even do something like use a 5-year average, and that you will continue to meet that number, and maybe then as time goes on, you could begin to raise it. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's not that they're asking colleges to set goals per se. They're saying, well, what's your standard, so that we can report that standard to the Department of Education when we do our annual report.
Well, let me make a somewhat editorial comment on that. One of the things that's happened to California's community college system in recent years is because years ago, in a decline in funding, this office began to stop doing the financial watch list. Then at some point, the commission interjected itself and said, okay, nobody else is going to do this. We now are going to be the body that requires colleges to fill out this financial health form. That's unfortunate. That should be done by the state chancellor's office. And we feel the same way about these educational goals. We think these are college responsibilities, not the accrediting commission. And so we're trying to get out ahead on this level of accountability, where I think we fell behind in terms of finance. And by the way, we intend to come back to the commission at some point and wrest control of financial accountability back to where it belongs, which is the chancellor's office, not the accrediting commission. But I hear what you're saying about the language that's in the accreditation requirements. But the Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education, has made it crystal clear. The state legislature has made it crystal clear that they expect us to set and monitor goals. And so I agree with you that there is some flexibility in the accrediting standards. I think that is somewhat temporary and short-lived. We might as well get ahead of this as opposed to falling behind.
Yeah, and what I was really speaking to is the change they made in the annual report last year, which was the first year that there was a change in terms of, for persistence, retention, degree completion, et cetera, to set a standard. It wasn't, so to speak, set these high-level goals that you might not be able to achieve, and suddenly you don't look so good because you didn't meet your goal.
Right.
It was rather set a standard and make sure you meet the standard.
First of all, thank you very much, Vice Chancellor Perry, for the report and for all your work in this whole area. I think Chancellor Harris is absolutely correct that the system has really become a leader in the country when it comes to accountability, and under your leadership, that's we have all of you to thank for that. I'm just curious on, and this is more maybe your opinion than anything, because I know you're looking just at the numbers and the data, but on page 7, under the remedial rates, the cohort line for the remedial English rate went up 2.5% from the start to the end of that line. And as you said, there was no real improvement or the stability in the math rate. Do you have any thoughts, as to why there's a difference in, the improvement in those two subjects?
As to why we did better in both of them over these successive cohorts, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the years of these cohorts, these are the cohorts where we actually started doing quite a bit of basic skills work in the system. It became a focus of the Board of Governors. It became a focus of the system, and there was some resource put into it. So we as a system paid attention more to it. And I think we've probably started a lot of innovations during this period of time.
My question centers around the cost. You mentioned earlier in the conversation that you had were addressing the issue of additional staffing, but the work that you've done to this point, has it come out of your normal budget, and then now you're applying for additional funding, or how is this going to, on an ongoing basis, be funded?
The actual goal setting and the reporting. We were given personnel to do accountability reporting back when we started the ARC report. So we actually have a pretty robust staff in research and in MIS to do this on an ongoing basis without any additional augmentation necessarily needed. So we just do it as a natural course of what we do in research and MIS.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. Any other comments? Well, we will look forward to the next 2 months having further input from Consultation Council and others, and look to see it back on the agenda in May. Thank you very much for that very clear presentation.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
We'll now move on to information reports. Item 4.3, California Community College's Baccalaureate Degree Study Group Report. This item presents information on the report from the California Community College Baccalaureate Degree Study Group. Chancellor Harris.
Thank you, President Baca, members of the board. As Eric and Vince make their way to the podium, let me make some background comments. Remind the board that more than a year ago when I came into this role, it was clear, I think, to all of us that there had been unsuccessful legislation in recent years to allow California community colleges to offer the baccalaureate, but that it was clear to all of us that there was more legislation on the horizon. And so at the time, I formed a study group at the recommendation of this board in your March retreat, your January retreat of last year, and asked that they take a look at the community college baccalaureate trends across the country and what that might look like for California. And the report, which you have in front of you and actually you've received previously, is the result of that work. And I want to thank the task force under Barry Russell, who at the time was Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs here in the Chancellor's office, for their work. And we have two of the members of the task force that are in the room today, and I want to personally thank David Morse with the Faculty Senate and Constance Carroll representing the CEOs, along with their other colleagues on the task force that are listed on page, I think that's page 5 or 6 of the report, for really a great deal of work looking at both the national trends and beginning to study the potential impact here in California. Again, I want to suggest to you that since this report has come out, we have received a tremendous amount of feedback, and that feedback has come in the form of numerous letters from students and colleagues up and down the state. In a few cases, already resolutions passed by locally elected boards, and then a great deal of informal communication from the field directly to me and to members of our executive team. And I would say the predominant amount of that feedback has been very, very positive. I think the other thing that has surprised, frankly, many of us is the level of public support, both indirectly that we get from members of the community and in the legislature, but especially in the media for the community college baccalaureate. I would also need to be candid with you that we've had some of our colleagues and some feedback that has suggested they don't think this is a good idea. And I think I can best describe that by sort of explaining where I have been personally on this issue. I have worked very hard during the study phase of this to stay neutral on this issue. And I did that because I really wanted the study group to do its work. But in addition to that, I did it because I have, along with a lot of leaders in community college education across this country, been very concerned about the timing of the community college baccalaureate. In fact, when I was first came to California in the early 90s and through my tenure here in Los Rios, I really felt strongly, especially back in the 08-09 and the year or two after that, that the community college baccalaureate was probably not timed well for California at a time we were desperately trying to fulfill the mission that we had, and that our mission was being somewhat narrowed by the legislature. And then, as you know, with the passage of Prop 30, things turned around, and they've turned around pretty dramatically pretty quickly. So now, flash forward to the work of the study group, and when you get into this, and Eric will go into it in detail in a moment, and Vince will talk about the political side of this. In fact, in this world, there's a timing for everything, and I now believe the timing for consideration of the community college baccalaureate is extremely well timed. And when you look at what's happened in the rest of the country, and when you especially look at the workforce needs for the state of California, I think if we are truly committed to providing a workforce for this state, and especially to meeting the demands for bachelor degree holders in California in the next decade or two, doing that without the community college baccalaureate seems almost impossible. Having said that, there will be a great deal of challenge in getting from where we are now to ultimately seeing this take place. And as you know from the discussion with our colleagues with the UC and the CSU yesterday, there is still a vast amount of opinion in those systems about whether we should go down this path. Having said all of that, at the end, what all of us have to do, those of us in the field and certainly the Board of Governors, is to try to judge what's in the best interest of California and what's in the best interest of the students of California. And that's why I am very optimistic and very bullish on this report, and why I think now is the time for us to begin having very serious conversations about moving forward. I will ask Eric and Vince to delve into first the specifics of the report and then the political environment, and then I'll make a couple of other comments before we open it up for comments from the audience and questions of the board. Eric?
President Baca, Chancellor Harris, members of the board. We'll, as the Chancellor suggested, I'll step through some background on the study group and their work process, the key findings from the report, and then Vince will address the political dimensions of it and legislation that's currently moving through the Capitol. So just to begin with, I think to provide some context, this study group was convened by the Chancellor to explore what is really a national trend, the expansion of community colleges into the baccalaureate degree programs. At this point, we have nationwide at least 50 community colleges in more than 21 states that are offering baccalaureate degrees. There are over 500 different baccalaureate degree programs available across the nation, and so this is a national trend, and fundamentally it's about the colleges that are pursuing this and the states that are pursuing this view this as a way of expanding access to higher education, and view it as an approach to expanding the infrastructure available to produce the educated citizens we need in order to be competitive in a world economy. So the study group was convened by the Chancellor, as noted. It was chaired by Vice Chancellor Barry Russell. The study group had 16 members. They represented faculty and administrators from across the system. There were representatives of both state and national educational professional groups. There were researchers represented, and also both each of UC and CSU each had a representative on the body as well. Their charge was not to develop a final plan or kind of a specific action plan for you as a board, but rather to generally explore the issues related to community college baccalaureate degrees, essentially surveying the landscape and identifying what are the key issues that we'll have to address if California goes down this path. So that task force, or rather that study group, met between August and December of 2013, and its report, and you've got it in front of you, came out early this year. And so the key findings from the report, again, are really generally in the category of issues that we'll have to address. Policy matters that are would be key in any attempt to implement a community college baccalaureate degree in California. Some of the key issues are identified. One, a matter of mission, that if the California community colleges begin offering baccalaureate degrees, we should be sure to not detract from the other missions that our system serves. So our the core functions around workforce training, around transfer, around basic skills, other key missions that we would need to go down this path in a manner that allowed us to not retreat from those other key missions. Another admonition from the study group was that the building out of community college baccalaureate degrees should be done in a manner that was responsive to specific regional workforce needs. And this is really very much fitting with the way these degrees have generally been implemented in other parts of the nation, and they've been outgrowths really representing specific educational tracks and training tracks that are not being met by other institutions. And so the task force, the study group, recommended that in California we should also go down that pathway of really having some thoughtful regional analysis of what are those unmet needs that employers are looking for, and how can we fill those gaps. The study group also considered various funding models that could be used to support a community college baccalaureate program. And the study group considered a range of options that, based on what's been implemented in other parts of the nation, and these really varied from a largely self-supporting model where the student would bear the additional cost of the baccalaureate program, all the way through to a publicly supported model. I think the study group felt that there was a high degree of probability that the community colleges could deliver a baccalaureate degree at a very cost-effective level. It would represent a good investment from the state. So I think there was an inclination that the state, at least in California, having public funding to support this was probably the best path forward. Although, again, they didn't settle on a specific recommendation, but they did highlight the fact that the community colleges could provide such an educational pathway in a very economical manner. The study group also considered the matter of admissions. Clearly, this would be an area where our system would need to do a lot of thinking in terms of the best manner in which to apply admissions criteria that are part and parcel with any baccalaureate program, but are not part of our current open access model. And so there are different approaches to this. admissions criteria and admissions process could be enacted upon a student's entrance into a community college when they're entering into a lower division work, or an admissions process could be implemented upon the completion of lower division work, more analogous to how a student transfers to CSU. For instance, now it's upon completing the lower division work, they apply for entrance into the CSU. Similar process could be utilized even within an individual community college. So that admissions process would be something that would have to be navigated, obviously along with what kind of criteria would be used to determine which students were admitted and which ones weren't. The study group emphasized the need to avoid unnecessary duplication of educational pathways with other institutions of higher education, UC, CSU, and as well as the independent colleges and universities. In order to do so, this will require collaboration, I believe, with those other systems, and some conversations about the best way to roll this out in order to avoid the kind of unnecessary duplication. I'd also link that back to the study group's earlier note around the need to tie these new degrees to specific regional workforce needs. I think it's part of the same conversations. What are the educational needs that are currently being met in a region, and which ones are not? If a UC or CSU is meeting a specific educational kind of workforce training need in an area, well, there's obviously less need for a community college to step up to provide that. So, I think there's a series of regional dialogues, most likely led by our local educational leaders at our colleges, I believe, that are best positioned to conduct the lion's share of those conversations. Although clearly there's a role for the state level policy to also kind of set the framework for those conversations. The study group also emphasized that a community college baccalaureate is one tool to expand access, but it shouldn't be viewed as a silver bullet. It shouldn't be viewed as as an approach that would take the place of other initiatives that we've historically pursued in order to provide access to a baccalaureate degree, notably transfer. Transfer would, under any scenario, would continue to be a core function of the community colleges, and the initiatives and the work that's been done to help our students successfully transfer to CSU under the Associate Degree for Transfer initiative obviously would, that's the type of work that the study group feels that it was critical that we as a system continue with that work, as well as our efforts to facilitate transfer to UC and to the independents and the private colleges. The study group also noted other models that are out there that should also be maintained and continued, including co-location. There are various models being implemented across the state where a 4-year institution has a presence at one of our community colleges to facilitate that transfer process, or conversely where a community college has a presence at a 4-year university, again, to facilitate that transfer. So there are multiple approaches to helping our students successfully navigate their way to a baccalaureate degree. A community college baccalaureate could be one more tool in our tool chest, I think was essentially the study group's view on that. The study group identified the additional workload that would be I guess I'd say they raised the issue of the potential of additional workload in the chancellor's office in terms of approving and monitoring and regulating these baccalaureate programs. They didn't go into a great deal of detail on that, but I think that's a reality that we're going to have to figure out as a chancellor's office and put together a more specific analysis of what that additional workload entails and what that translates into in terms of staffing. And then lastly, the task force identified the need to, if California goes down this path, to develop systems of data collection and evaluation to monitor the implementation of these baccalaureate degrees in order to guide future policy decisions related to those degrees. So those are the key issues that they identified in the report. At the conclusion of the report, they essentially their conclusion was that the community college baccalaureate degree merits serious review and discussion by you as a board and by the chancellor's office. So essentially, they tossed it back to you for for some additional review and discussion. Again, I'd remind you that their charge was not to make a decision about whether or not California community colleges should go down this path, but rather it was to survey the landscape and bring back some findings and observations to you. So, that's where we're at now. As the chancellor pointed out, this is an idea that has been discussed broadly over a number of years. This isn't the first time that it's kind of come to the fore as a significant policy issue. It is emerging again in the Capitol, and there's a specific piece of legislation that has become the focal point of the discussions, and that's a bill by Senator Marty Block. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chancellor Stewart to provide you some context about that legislation.
Great, thank you, Eric. Chancellor Harris, President Baca, members of the board, I think we discussed briefly yesterday SB 850, the legislation by Senator Block to create a pilot program around the applied baccalaureate degree. And I think that legislation, while it's in an initial form, and we do expect that it will go under further revision, it does reference some of the recommendations that are in the BA study group report. Quite honestly, I think the challenge here is going to be to balance those recommendations with what we think can be reasonably accomplished on a legislative timetable, and I think in partnership with the UC and the CSU. And I certainly was encouraged yesterday by the words of Chancellor Timothy White from the CSU, where I think he acknowledged that under certain circumstances and conditions and in perhaps certain regions of the state, it might make sense. So I think the challenge that we have before us is how do we balance the desire of the senator and I think others within the legislature to move a legislative vehicle forward on this issue with, I think, the recommendations of this study group and arriving at a proposal that really makes sense and allows us the flexibility to address some of these very important issues around making a workforce evaluation, figuring out the funding aspects of a program like this. So we're certainly going to be doing that in the coming weeks because we know that the legislative calendar is going to move forward irrespective of sort of what we would want to do in terms of timing. So we're committed to doing that. I suspect that Senator Block is not the only legislator who's interested in this issue, and I know that he has spoken on a number of occasions in various legislative hearings about the importance of this issue to him, about the references by, I think, many groups, foundations and others that have said over the course of the next several years through 2020 that we're going to need to produce a large number of folks with baccalaureate degrees in this state to meet workforce needs. We currently don't have the bandwidth within our institutions to do that, so how are we going to address that need? So I think that's ultimately the goal. This may or may not be the model in terms of 850 as we see it now to move us toward that goal, but I think there's an acknowledgement that we need to have these conversations and figure out what is the best way forward. So we're certainly committed to doing that, and we're already convening conversations to move in that direction. So I don't have a lot of detail to share with you at this point in terms of where I think this will ultimately land, but I can say that we had a very good conversation with Senator Block. I think it was in early January. We had suggested to him that we thought really the best venue to have these detailed conversations would be to move that to the Board of Governors and to work with your counterparts at the Board of Trustees and the Board of Regents and their respective staff to figure out what really makes sense in the context of moving this whole conversation forward.
Thank you. Just let me make a couple of concluding comments, and then we'll open it up for questions and comments. I want to thank Vince and Eric for their overview. I would simply summarize by reminding the board that we believe that the community college baccalaureate is best structured so that those decisions are made locally. You heard Chancellor White say yesterday, and I think most of us would agree, that these degrees make the most sense when the region, the local colleges in that region, not just the community college, but in some cases the CSU and the UC, work together to determine what makes the most sense for that region. Secondly, I think it's important that we, as we look at the financing of this activity, that we continue to protect at all costs our requirement that the legislature set the fees for our students, not only for the courses in community colleges that we have now, but any courses that might be offered in the future. By doing so, the legislature will make decisions about how a program like this might be funded. And I think for us to assume either this board or local boards are going to set those fees would be a very dangerous precedent that we certainly do not want to go down. Thirdly, I would also underscore the need for us to remain open access institutions. I believe that the community college baccalaureate could, in essence, dramatically diversify the bachelor degree holders in the state of California if we take the same open admissions attitude about the baccalaureate that we currently have about our all of our programs. Now, obviously, there are only so many slots that can be filled in a baccalaureate degree program, but frankly, that's the case for many of our career and technical programs now. As long as you enter those conversations with an open access attitude, then the product at the back end is as diverse as is California. And finally, there are those who will argue that this is mission creep, and of course we know we're under conversations currently about the support of adult education in California, and some have argued mission creep there as well. I guess my view of the term mission creep is that mission creep may not be good if unnecessary. But in the case where you have a state as huge and diverse as California and in need of competing not only in this country but globally with a competitive workforce, then the expansion of a mission in that case makes sense. And so as long as we approach this with what's in the best interest of our students and of the state of California, then I think we'll make the right decision, and ultimately this parallel process in the legislature will serve students and the state well. With that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you know, with regard to the mission, you know, there are some fundamental things that we do as part of that mission, and it seems that, at least in this area, that, and it's true in adult ed, that they're very consistent with the mission, although maybe not specifically seen that way, but related, unlike some other interests that maybe move away from the basic mission, particularly that of access. Before we open up for board comments, we do have a number of public comments, and Vice President Baum.
Yeah, we do have a number of cards, so I'm going to call two names at a time. First off, we have Chancellor Constance Carroll, and she will be followed by Dr. Marcia Alameda.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I've provided two documents that I'll speak from. One is a summary of my remarks this morning, and the other is a position paper that I wrote on this subject. And first, I'd really like to thank you for taking this seriously. This has been an idea that's come up a number of times, but the fact that Chancellor Harris has put together a study group assures that there is a balanced, fully collaborative process, and that, I think, is what has been lacking in this debate so far. So I'd like to thank you, and thank you for allowing me to serve on the study group. And I'd also like to thank you, Chancellor Harris, for your very thoughtful comments this morning. I couldn't agree more with your statements about access and locally responsible actions and the like. Basically, there are three things that I want to point to. The reason we're taking a look at this is because the industry standards have changed. Where the associate degree used to be the entry level, that's now moved, that bar has moved, not only is about to move, but in many cases has already moved to the baccalaureate level. And I'd like to note that in some cases, in many cases, the university capacity for those programs that have moved to the baccalaureate level is just not there. And I'd like to use just 5 brief examples, which I mentioned in my comments. One is nursing, where there are 19 CSU nursing programs, 2 UC nursing programs, and well over 70 associate degree nursing programs. And what is already happening to our students is that the associate degree registered nurses are being passed over for nurses who have the baccalaureate degree. So this is an urgent matter that needs to be addressed, and I think we're well aware of its controversy from a political standpoint. But there are other fields as well. Dental hygiene, radiologic technology, health information sciences, and automotive technology are the other 4 that I would like to point to just as examples. To let you know that as this climate has changed and baccalaureate degrees, baccalaureates are now looked for in these fields, there is limited or no capacity. In dental hygiene, no public university in California offers a bachelor's degree. In radiologic technology, there are only 2 CSU campuses that offer a bachelor's degree. In health information sciences, there are 2 UCs and 2 CSUs and 1 UC that offer the bachelor's program. And of course, in automotive technology, there are no public institutions that offer these degrees. The alternative for our students is either to move to another state, which many of them have had to do in order to pursue their careers, or to pursue their baccalaureates in very high-cost for-profit institutions where they can pay anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 a year and end up with a great deal of debt. So the changes in industry are what have motivated the notion that we would make a modification, not a change in mission, but a modification in mission, and the lack of capacity to train our students is the other motive. Third, you do know that there are 21 states that already do this with immense success. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look at these states as our models. Last, in terms of collaboration, many of our community college districts are already in deep discussion with their local universities and local industries. I know in San Diego we are, and we feel very, very confident that we could work this out in a low-cost, affordable, high-quality manner in cooperation with our local universities and with our local hospitals and other industries that are looking to us to provide leadership in this regard. So I think that's the end, but I thank you so much for listening and being open to this possibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Carroll, for your leadership on this.
Dr. Alameda, followed by Terry Snow.
Good morning, President Baca, Chancellor Harris, and members of the board. I was also honored to be a member of the Baccalaureate Study Group, and I thank you for that honor. I'm going to speak more specifically to nursing, if I may be allowed. Let me just reiterate some key points in terms of background. The Institute of Medicine recommendation number 4 calls for 80% of registered nurses by the year 2020 to have a baccalaureate degree. This has been a driving force in the shift of employment determination in the state of California and the nation. Hospitals are seeking something called magnet status, which requires an upward educational ladder Therefore, hospitals are hiring BSN required and preferred RNs, and the gap between BSN and ADN hires in hospitals is ever increasing. Importantly, current reimbursement policy does not support RN positions growth in community-based settings in the near future, and any policy realignment with the required structural changes will be years in the making. Let me outline the current need based on the Board of Registered Nursing data for schools that did supply this data for 2012 to 2013. Approximately, thank you. Approximately can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Approximately 5,905 students complete an associate degree nursing program, which means 35,400 associate degree nursing graduates between now and 2020 will need to seek baccalaureate education. Here's a point that's not a part of the rhetoric that's very, very important. There are also approximately 180,000 California RNs who have an associate degree in nursing, and these RNs are seeking BSN educational opportunities through the same institutions that we are. What does this data mean? This means that approximately 28,000 RNs per year will need to be awarded a BSN to make the IOM recommendation of 80% as the industry demand. Let's look at current capacity based on the same report. BSN and ELM programs graduated 5,125 RNs in 2012 to 2013. There's a significant disparity between that number and the number that we're going to need on an annual basis for graduation purposes. Furthermore, as has been indicated repeatedly, capacity caps have been implemented at many CSUs. This year, with my collaborative, we have a capacity cap both on our graduate nurses and the institutional RNs. So what is the current outcome in the environment? ADN graduates are disenfranchised in the employment arena. ADN graduates and our institutional partner ADN staff members are disenfranchised in the ladder to affordable BSN education due to capacity limits. Therefore, we respectfully request the following of the board. We ask the Board of Governors of the California Community College System and the Chancellor to embrace the baccalaureate study group proposal to research and implement the baccalaureate degree at community colleges inclusive of nursing. By logical extension, we ask the Board of Governors and the Chancellor to fully embrace and support Senate Bill 850 by Senator Marty Block, inclusive of nursing, in which the bill's wording closely approximates the research provisions of the baccalaureate degree study group report. We ask the Board of Governors and the Chancellor to embrace these requests with primary regard to the students, the taxpayers of California, the profession of nursing, and the safeguarding of patient safety. And finally, we ask the Board of Governors and the Chancellor to trust in our commitment to safeguard the mission of the California Community College System as we evolve to address the professional workforce demands of California and the dreams and aspirations of the 2 million students and families we so proudly serve. I thank you very much for the honor of addressing you.
Thank you. Terry Snow, followed by Cindy Collier.
Hi, my name is Terry Snow. I'm from Shasta College in Redding, California. I'm representing Northern California. 50 years ago, we were promised a UC, and we're still waiting for our UC up in Redding. And March 1964, they appointed someone to be on the Board of Governors for UC. And in the local newspaper on Saturday, there was an article on this. There are many sacred cows here, and we need to herd them up and get them going in the right direction. Our largest employer in Shasta County of nurses, Mercy Medical Center, for 2 years has not hired my new graduates from my program. They don't want anyone starting there with less than a BSN. Our communities in Siskiyou and Shasta County voted for bonds to build health science buildings in the 2000s. We spent millions of dollars. And so the people in our area are very supportive of nursing and want to see it grow and become better. We want highly educated local nurses. where if you break a bone on Mount Shasta, or you get a fishing lure stuck somewhere, or have a motor vehicle crash on I-5, you have highly educated, well-trained nurses. The CSU's lost Humboldt State Nurses Program. So we need to bring this education to local people. As Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. The ADN directors of the state of California are ready to change. And my final comment is hashtag pass SB 850, hashtag bring it.
Thank you. Cindy Collier, followed by Douglas Houston.
I'm Cindy Collier, and I represent Bakersfield College, but more importantly, the Central Valley of California. And as most of you are aware, the Central Valley is large, and we tend to have lots of space in between our higher educational institutions. So I'm going to give you an example of what it's like in Bakersfield, which you probably aren't aware of. But about 70% of all nurses that work in the city of Bakersfield have been trained at the associate degree. The majority of our nurses come to us and stay to us because they're local people. It's hard to recruit nurses into the community of Bakersfield just because it's hard to recruit. And so when I look at the nursing workforce in our area, our local CSU is impacted. It's one of the few programs at that college that's impacted. And I've had major conversations with the CSU as to what can we do? Can we work together? When we look at our local workforce needs, our hospitals are overwhelmingly wanting baccalaureate-prepared nurses. But they will also tell you they're very, very proud of the graduates that come out of the community college because we have a long-standing history of meeting our community's healthcare workforce needs. In my conversations with the CSU, they're like, we're not going to fight. You know what? We understand that we need more baccalaureate-prepared nurses. We understand that access is an issue. For our students, there isn't anywhere else to go. They're those students who are paying the $30,000 to $50,000 for online programs, or worse yet, they go to another college out of state and don't return to us. So I want to urge all of you to consider this. It's very important for the profession of nursing, but more importantly, for our health as a state. Unless we really meet our workforce needs in nursing, we will not survive as a state. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Douglas Houston, followed by Tammy Rice.
President Baca, members of the board, Chancellor Harris, thank you for your leadership, thank you for your interest in this topic, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm the Chancellor of the Yuba Community College District, so I'm here representing my district, but first I would like to share with you survey results that were collected by the CEO board. The president and chair of the CEO board, Dr. Helen Benjamin, asked me to speak on her behalf. She was unable to attend today. But the CEO board did collect survey responses from the 136 presidents and chancellors in the state. 87 responded to a survey that was conducted last month, so 64% response rate's pretty good indicator of where the CEOs in this state stand. Of those 87 respondents, 3 opposed this initiative altogether, 14 expressed some concern and voted, if you will, to watch Senator Block's bill, expressing some of the concerns that you've already heard today, questions of admissions, questions of funding, and many expressing concerns about the 8-year pilot nature of it, acknowledging that with the startup requirements, 8 years may be too short a time to actually see a real success with the initiative. Having said that, 70 of the respondents wholeheartedly supported this initiative, sharing many of the comments that you've already heard, most of us focusing on the needs for workforce development. Having said that, as a CEO in this state, and many of my colleagues call me the rural guy, most of my 23-year career in the California Community College has been in rural community college settings, and so I just want to echo a few of the comments that you've already heard. I've served at colleges where the nearest state public university is an hour to 2-hour drive away. My last institution before coming to the Yuba Community College District was Lassen College, where the nearest public university was the University of Nevada at Reno. And frankly, it was virtually impossible in that setting to serve the workforce needs in that particular part of the state. And we've heard that echoed across the rest of this state, that in many of our rural communities where we have a desperate need to address these workforce needs, There is no public university accessible. With all respect to our private partners, we feel like we're selling our soul to the devil in order to secure the kind of partnerships that would bring these workforce development opportunities into our communities. And yet we have community colleges that are accessible to the members of those communities. And so along with the 69 other CEOs who responded to the survey, we urge you to support this initiative. Thank you.
Tammy Rice, followed by Diane Moore.
I'm Tammy Rice. I'm from Saddleback College, South Orange County. We do have some of the same problems there. We have a CSU, but it is largely impacted by its own students, and that's across the board in probably all majors. Some years they're admitting, some years they're not, and we never know if it's going to be fall or if it's going to be spring or when it's going to be. So right now I think we're doing a disservice to our students. They need to be able to get a better education and advanced education. And, you know, we are a really great group of colleges. We have it all down. We know how to make that associate degree work. We can get them through in 2 years if that's what we need to do. And I think that we really are the best place to also offer the baccalaureate education in some of the majors that we've talked about. We do have the same degrees and the same qualifications. There's no difference. And we often have a much better handle on the diversity of the students and what they need, and especially student success. So I urge you to wholeheartedly support this resolution and to try to move it forward. I'd like for you to know that my college is in support of this resolution, and the Academic Senate of the college has embraced it also. So there's not as much resistance as you might think, and all you have to do is put a bunch of nurses on a task force and they'll get it done for you. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you. Hello, Dr. Moore, and then followed by Dr. Moore, it's Linda Zorn.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am from Pasadena City College, and I'm sort of representing the Southern California, Los Angeles area for this. Pasadena has nursing program, was started in the 1920s. It had a cooperative arrangement with the college for a very long time, and it was the first associate degree program in the state for nursing. Now we would like to move to the next phase and be, if possible, the first BSN program in the state. I know we have a little competition with some of my colleagues, but at any rate, we feel that it's extremely important, and we have complete support from students, the Academic Senate, the administration, and our community. The community, in fact, as you've heard from others, are the same in terms of we've lost contracts, clinical contracts, because we are not a BSN program. Or they're not hiring our graduates, even though they have in the past, because they are not BSN. We have a cooperative arrangement in terms of BSN with Cal State LA, but I have almost 300 students in the nursing program, and they'll only take 10 a year. That's hardly going to meet that 80-20 need that has been identified by the Institute of Medicine. The Institute of Medicine, as you've heard, the American Nurses Association, and many others support this BSN program. And there, as you've heard, 22 other states have had this, and it's been very successful with them. So we are ready, willing, and able. We have a curriculum plan in mind. We have faculty who are qualified and want to do this, and we have students who want to do this. We have administration that will provide support for us. So we're asking your help to also support this so that we can provide the BSN nurses that our community needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Zorn, followed by somebody Hunter. Tricia Hunter.
Good morning, President Baca, Chancellor Harris. Thank you. I'm Linda Zorn. I'm the Sector Navigator, Statewide Director for the Health Workforce Initiative. It's part of the Workforce and Economic Development Division here at the Chancellor's Office. And I really want to thank the colleagues of mine for their comments. I won't repeat those. But I want to focus on the workforce needs because that's what we do in economic and workforce development. And as I travel around the state, attending nursing advisory meetings and talking to industry, we've heard loud and clear their desire to hire nurses that are prepared at the baccalaureate level. And as was mentioned earlier, it's not just nursing now. We're hearing the entry level to practice in other fields is going to be the baccalaureate degree. So part of the report talked about the response to regional workforce needs, and that's what we want to help with. So I simply want to be here today to offer the services of the Health Workforce Initiative and our deputy sector navigators across the state as we move forth. Currently, we are partnering with our Centers of Excellence and the California Hospital Association on a statewide survey that is looking at the preferential hiring practices of acute care, ambulatory care, and long-term care in the nursing field. So we'll get a very good snapshot very soon about the desire for the BSN nurse versus the ADN nurse. And I know that research and data are going to be important parts of this, so I just want to offer the support of my initiative, my group, and myself as we move forward with this. And we do, again, support the resolution and want to be a part of this. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tricia Hunter, and I'm with the American Nurses Association California, strongly in support of both the legislation and the hoping to get the Chancellor's office and the Board of Governors support within this process as well. We support the initiative for a number of reasons, one being that more than 50% of nurses do graduate from ADM programs, but has been expressed almost 80% of them are going on for the bachelor's degree right away. I know of one private college that actually has changed their curriculum for their ADM program to have an immediate pass-through and admittance into their BSN step-up program so that the students can get a 4-year degree because none of them could get hired without it. That's a very expensive way to get your bachelor's degree. I am an ADN graduate with a bachelor's degree. In the early 90s, it only cost me $20,000 to get it. It's a great deal more now, but it also cost me a lot more credits and a longer period of time than it should have taken to just get a BSN. There is no such thing as a 2-year nursing degree at the community college. Before you enter the nursing program, you have to take anywhere from a year to a year and a half prerequisites. The disadvantage that provides for students who do not have funds or who are disadvantaged, maybe the first person ever into college, which is frequently what we see at our community colleges. They don't qualify for scholarship funding because they are not admitted to a nursing program. You have to be admitted to a nursing program to be able to get funding from the state scholarship that we as nurses provide through our finance fees with our licensing fees. And for most of the other funding for nursing programs, you have to be in one. And so the students who go to the community college have a year and a half of college they have to figure out how to do on their own. Many of them take up to 3 to 5 years just to get the prerequisites done. And they almost have a bachelor's degree, an AD degree at that point, and then they go on for another 2 years, which is the requirements to meet the nursing requirements for a degree. So they've got a 3.5-year degree, and they don't have a bachelor's degree. We're talking a 21-unit difference between the BSN programs and the ADM programs in California. And we believe that the community college should be able to pick up those 21 units, and whether they do it as a step-up process that's an addition to the ADN or do it as a clean bachelor's degree, we believe the community college should have the right to make that decision for the nursing programs. And just anecdotally, I live in San Diego. CSU in San Diego has been really great with trying to work with our community colleges and staff, but for the 5 community college nursing programs within our region, there were 14 slots last year for someone to go on for a bachelor's degree. They had something like 400 applicants for every slot. And so the only option left to those students, and by the way, 80% do go on for their bachelor's because that's what the employers want, was to go to a program that cost anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 a year.
Thank you. Beth Smith.
Thank you. I wanted to speak to you directly since the media has already contacted me several times about this issue, and it seemed a little unfair not to at least talk to you all about it when I've been speaking to the media. The faculty currently have a position to oppose expanding the mission of the community colleges into the bachelor's degree realm. That position was taken in 2010, 4 years ago, may be time to revisit that. I think there is a great amount of interest around the state and throughout the faculty to at least have these conversations and see what this might mean for us. And so with our plenary coming up in April in just a few weeks, I expect lots of resolutions on this topic and lots of debate about what the next steps may be. So I appreciate all the comments from the speakers that came before me, laying out the interest for California, laying out the interest for students and for our colleges, and I know that we will continue to have that conversation amongst the faculty over the next few weeks. And in May, when you meet again, I will be able to bring you the results from plenary and about what direction the faculty feel is very important to go. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public.
Chancellor, did Deputy Chancellor, Vice Chancellor take on questions?
Yeah, well,
we're
you
good.
guys go back in case there are questions from the board.
Members? Let you. Thank you both, Deputy Chancellor and Vice Chancellor, on bringing us up to speed on this, and thank you for the public comments. Member Belansky?
Yeah, I want to second that, just to thank you for the presentation, but also the people that have come, in some instances, long distances, to make very well stated arguments as to why to move forward in a very specific, and I was hearing like that we would move in a very focused, a very strategic, a very well planned out way. But it does raise the question for me as to what is the next step. We've had a group that's come together, they've made some recommendations, they've talked about the issues that have to be addressed. And so my question becomes, is it that you wait for the Marty Block bill to pass so that then Ed Code gets updated, or whatever the word is, to include this now, and that they then say, the legislature says to the state chancellor's office, now you need to get Title V regulations in place? I'd just like to know what the next step is.
Well, I wish I could tell you that with a great deal of clarity. I cannot. As is often the case, these are parallel activities. And so to answer your question about this board, we intend to come forward to you at your retreat and have a broader conversation about mission, not only about the baccalaureate, but about adult ed and about the California Community College mission. And as Senate President Smith mentioned, I'm going to speak at plenary later this month, or next month, I guess it is, and I'm going to talk about mission. So that conversation, and begun by the study group and now continued here, is going to continue. Parallel to that is the legislative process, and that is often the case. Often we find our conversations here and those in the legislature running side by side, and it'll be difficult to tell you, who will end up where first. However, I would say that it is encouraging, I think it should be encouraging to this board, that we are in some respects out ahead of this, because we started this conversation ourselves, knowing, of course, that the legislature was going to entertain it. But the other thing that's happened as a result of all this is a broader public debate about this. And we've seen it in the media. We've seen it, you saw the results of it yesterday when you asked a question of Chancellor White. So I think this process is going on multiple fronts, but there is, at this point, no direct linkage, although at some point, if this bill goes further, this board may be asked to take a position on it. Is that fair, guys?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think the reality is that, SB 850 is likely going to move forward in the legislative process, and I think that we have to be proactive in that conversation. So the challenge is how do we navigate, I think, the very informative comments that we heard today from our key stakeholders, work with our colleagues at the UC and the CSU to try and develop a process and hopefully an outcome that we can all agree and get behind. And I think the challenge, quite honestly, there is just the timing of the legislative process itself. Personally, I don't think we want to sit back and let that legislation run its course, because I think then we have something imposed upon us that may or may not serve any of us quite well. And I also don't think that we want to repeat the process that played out between the University of California and the California State University when the CSU sought the independent authority for the education doctorate. I think that was a very contentious conversation. And from what I heard yesterday, and I think what I've heard around the table today, is that we definitely want to work in partnership to arrive at a compromise that meets, I think, the objectives that have been laid out, but also recognizes some of the concerns and some of the very legitimate, I don't want to say barriers, but issues that we need to work through, whether you're talking about funding or dealing with geographic areas or what have you.
Vice President.
First, thank you for the presentation, and thanks for the members of the public that came to speak. I was initially very reluctant to have us diverted our attention into this issue, and I remember the Chancellor's remarks at the League Conference about we've taken on so much with the Student Success Task Force and others. Do we really want to be diverted on that? So I appreciate the careful thought that's going into this. A principle that's important for me is the one that I just want to, that Vice Chancellor Stewart mentioned too, that we do this in alignment with our partner education institutions and not in competition or in conflict with them. Not to say that they all have a veto over what we decide as a independent sector, but at the same time, it'll be much better if we can find a way to do that. The other concern I had is, how can we entertain this when we can't even meet demand for many of these fields at the associates levels, and then we want to expand capacity to offer bachelor's degrees? Because I know that at all the community college districts I know, we talked about how that there's not enough spots for people to even get into the 8 associate programs, and so are we able as a system to expand to offer a bachelor's program? And so that's a concern that I have. And then the last is just philosophically, if in a perfect world there was a spot at the Cal State system for every student who would want from a associate degree to get that bachelor's either in nursing or in some of the other allied health fields like dental hygiene, would we be having this conversation? Should we focus on expanding capacity at the Cal State system as opposed to trying to create that at our level? And so that's a question.
Yeah, let me address your the first concern, or the second one you mentioned, which is the available slots now. I unfortunately, those of us in California live in a boom-bust cycle of revenue for everything that has to do with the state. And so there's probably never a perfect time to do something like this. Having said that, with the passage of Prop 30 and a relatively reasonable assurance that the next 3 to 5 years are going to be financially pretty good for us, there's probably never been a better time for us to have this conversation. I certainly wouldn't want to be sitting here in 08, 09 talking about this because it's unrealistic. Now, does that mean that we're going to have great funding into the future? Of course not. We have a boom-bust cycle. Having said that, if the legislature ultimately decides that we should have this authority, then in deciding that, they assume a lion's share of the responsibility to fund us accordingly. So I think that that's a bridge that will be crossed as this conversation continues. The philosophical conversation, and the question you ask, in a perfect world, if the CSU had available seats for everybody, would we be having this conversation? The reason we're having this conversation is because they don't. And practically speaking, they frankly never will. And in many of the areas, nursing being probably the only exception, in many of the areas, they have no desire to offer the bachelor's degree in those areas, or in a very, very limited way. So again, we go back to what's in the best interest of students in the state of California, and I think that's when the philosophical conversation sort of turns in the direction of the community college baccalaureate, as it has in 20 plus other states in the country.
Just to add one other comment based upon some things that were said. Some students may not have the luxury of a close-by CSU to even go to.
I haven't gotten into great detail about this, but I will tell you what Doug Houston said to you about rural colleges. The business model that under which we're funding rural colleges is not a good one. It's a struggle for those institutions. And the ability of some of those institutions to offer the baccalaureate degree can fundamentally alter that business model somewhat. And it does give them yet another audience, yet another market segment, especially in these very far away areas, which not only provides supports a need in the community, but also helps the long-term viability of small rural community colleges in California.
You know, there are some compelling arguments to at least have a serious discussion on this, which we are now having. And the air of cooperation that we have under the leadership of Chancellor Harris and Chancellor White and President Napolitano is an opportunity to take that serious discussion and see how it best fits into the mission of each of the segments of higher education. I have a question related to, and I was just trying to see if maybe it had been discussed in the report, but there are bachelor degrees being offered at some community colleges in the state through partnerships with the universities. Do you have any idea how many of those there might be? Just location, you know.
And just so I'm clear about your question, you're talking about the four-year institution granting the degree, but there's some form of collaboration.
They control the degree, the bachelor's degree, but I was just wondering how integrated it might be in terms of the just location.
Yeah, there are two or three of those joint, those on-campus programs. College of the Canyons, for example, has a bachelor degree granting institution on their campus. And there is at least one example of a community college center on a UC campus. So, but those are very limited. More in the Western region, however, in the proprietary institutions and in Hawaii and the Pacific Islands, there are a few community colleges who have one bachelor degree granting authority through the accrediting commission.
Well, I'm just curious, because at Mount SAC there is a bachelor's degree in aviation awarded with all the courses taught there, but it's awarded by Southern Illinois University. I was just wondering how many other
and I do not know the specific number, but that's exactly the type of thing we can pull together as you continue to deliberate on this. I would say that from my experience, I've heard of a number of them. You know, they're in the northern part of the state. There are at least a handful of these co-location programs. I think the model that's more common is definitely a four-year institution having a presence at the community college. And we can, but you know, we can survey that and provide that information to the board.
I think it just adds to maybe a little bit of perspective on the issue, even though it's minimally related to the concerns that we're experiencing. Well, thank you both very much for the presentation, Chancellor. Again, thank you for the public comment. And now we'll move on to board reports, item 4.4, and I think we'll begin with Member Belansky.
I just want to at least publicly acknowledge that I was able to go in February to the two academic senate workshops, institutes. One was the Accreditation Institute, and one was the Academic Academy. And I think, I want to say that publicly, that both were very, very well done with a lot of appropriate speakers. The Accreditation Institute, the focus is on best practices, how to share those best practices so that faculty coming together could learn about good ways to approach how to work with the accreditation standards. I will say that Saturday morning was a very uplifting morning because a number of the faculty had found out that letters had come from the accrediting commission and that their colleges had been taken off a sanction or fully reaffirmed, and so there was a lot of positive atmosphere that morning. And the academic academy that hasn't been that many weeks ago was on general education. And there's a lot of efforts going on about re-looking at how we structure general education, as it is just taking a bunch of courses and seat time and Carnegie units, or is it about learning specific skills? And so there was, I thought the presentations were quite good, and just want to say that. And I'm thankful to the fact that they invited us to breakfast yesterday.
Agreed.
I recently met with Keith and Mills and the J.P. Morgan investment firm here in Sacramento regarding our foundation funds for scholarships. And then I think Lance and I have a meeting next week with the foundation board, and they're doing good work, and we're proud of what they're done for us.
Thank you. Student Member Barrera.
Thank you. As Member Reed mentioned, we're going to have a foundation meeting, a board meeting next week, and so I look forward to that. And yes, we are very happy with the work that President Mills and the rest of the foundation staff have been engaging in. The one thing that I did since the last board meeting is attend the Asian Pacific Youth Leadership Program dinner, which is held annually here in Sacramento, and it was a very good dinner this year. They're all very good dinners, but this one was particularly good. The main student speaker was actually a recent admittee to the U.S. Naval Academy, and he gave a very good speech. And the community college table was very well attended, and we had Assembly Member Paul Fong, who sat with us at our table. And so it was a great evening of conversation and support for the colleges and for higher education.
Thank you. Vice President Baum, you have the last word.
Just a couple. First off, thanks to the Chancellor again for facilitating the conversation with the leaders of the other two systems yesterday. That was a terrific discussion. Just following up on something that President Baca mentioned, Justice Kennedy came to Rancho Mirage, and we were able to facilitate a meeting with students from College of the Desert. And I want to thank Dr. Joel Kinnaman, the president of College of the Desert, for helping with that. And the students came away very enthusiastic about the experience. And Justice Kennedy has expressed an opportunity for us as a system to see where we might support the teaching of the Constitution and other and civic engagement throughout community college students. And so we'll invite him to come to speak to us, but also his partner in that program is eager to come meet with this group and the system to talk about that. Finally, I just want to say thank you to all who have expressed, sent me notes of congratulations and encouragement about my reappointment. And again, it's working with this board and Gary and Lance and Jenna and Danny and Joseph and Debbie and Henry has really made this a special opportunity, and I'm pleased to have that opportunity to continue.
Congratulations again. Great to have you for another few years. We don't have any other items for public forum, right?
No cards for public forum.
No cards, and we have no new business. Therefore, this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you in May.